Welcome to Membership Voice. I'm Kero O'Shea, the coordinator of Voice and host for our webinar tonight. I'm delighted to welcome past District Governor of District 9500 and Assistant Rotary Membership Coordinator David Egan. David's going to be sharing the remarkable story of the transformation of Rotary Adelaide from an ageing, dwindling club to a diverse, inclusive and growing powerhouse. It's a story based on doing simple, repetitive and logical things that any club can emulate. All it takes is the will to act. Over to you, please, David.
And thank you for the opportunity, Kero, to tell this exciting story of the Rotary Club of Adelaide and its renewal and revival and reinvention over the years, over 5 years. So the objectives of my session today are to share this, the experience of this story with you. And it is a story. I'll try and keep it more of a story than anything else. Explain why we went on the change journey at Adelaide and what we changed, how we did it, and the results that were achieved. And at the end, I would like to share some really key learnings of the experience, because we're always learning, and I've certainly learned a lot from the experience of being involved in this with many others. So first of all, just let me say that there are a number of generic messages. I've tried to make the messages generic. A lot of people think, oh, Rotary Club of Adelaide, it's a fairly big club. We're only a small club. That's not relevant. The messages in this are for anybody interested in change. It could be a tennis club. It can be a church. It can be a small Rotary Club, a large Rotary Club. It can be I would like to think it can be the region of Australia and New Zealand that these messages apply to. So please keep that in mind as we go along. And I'd like to start off with the first message, generic message. Now, in Rotary, we have a systemic problem in that we have a changeover of our leadership every year. And sometimes of course, it is a good thing, but in a lot of cases, if people are not thinking in the right mindset, that it's an opportunity to serve rather than being a trumpet call to their self-importance, that can be a problem. So, we found this was certainly an issue over the experience. The other thing that I just wanted is a generic message, which we all know is our new vision statement. And of course, it's designed to overcome that aspect of the yearly change of a president, a DG, or even an international leader. It's really important that we keep these two things in mind. I'd like to start off with this picture of the Adelaide Oval, which is where the Rotary Club of Adelaide meets. This is an old picture, and it's circa 2000, which is the year that I joined the Rotary Club of Adelaide. And it's a fantastic metaphor for change, because there are a lot of similarities between the Adelaide Oval and Rotary, both historical. That oval was commenced in 1871, Rotary 1905, as you know, and in 1923, the Rotary Club of Adelaide started. So a bit of history there. Both of the Oval and Rotary are beautiful. Rotary Club, the Oval was known as the most beautiful oval, cricket oval in the world. But as you see at the top there, it's also tied. Perhaps Rotary has got to that stage as well. Certainly my club had. And there was a lot of resistance to change. Nobody wanted to change at the Adelaide Oval. In fact, in 1976, the custodians of the Oval would not change, and their co-tenant, the AFL football, as a result, left for 40 years. And that had a major impact on the ability of the Oval to carry on. And at the turn of the century, some of those custodians passed away, and people that took their place started to think strategically and thought about working together to try and reverse the situation, because the Oval had lost a lot of its ability to be a successful place without AFL football for 40 years. In 2007, the Oval. In 2007, the people that were sort of running the Oval sort of really took on a strategic approach to do something about it, and they worked for about 7 years. And in 2014, the Oval looked like this. It was modernised, it was relevant, attractive, and it was highly patronised compared to the way it was. It went from having about 250,000 spectators a year to over 2 million. And the public were extremely happy with the involvement at the Oval. So this metaphor, if you like, was in our minds in 2014, when our club looked a little bit like this. We were ageing, we were mainly male, and you can see, as you can see there, a lot of grey hair. You don't see too many women. You can see one on the bottom right-hand corner down the bottom. There weren't too many women at all in our club. We looked like that, and as you know, that's now 7 years ago, that photograph. So all those men there are another 7 years older as well. Our club age profile was quite significant. As you can see there, that 76% were aged over 60, very few under 50, very few in the 50 to 60 age group as well. And the telling statistic down the bottom is that almost twice as many were over 80 as they were under 50. So that was very significant. Our gender profile was pretty sick when you consider about, an average society, 50-50. As you can see, 14% female, and it was very uncomfortable for women to come to our club. A lot of them would say that they felt marginalised just being there. So that was an issue that we needed to address. So like most clubs in Australia and New Zealand, Rotary in Adelaide had ageing demographics, poor diversity, engagement fatigue, because a lot of our members were getting older and, they'd served long and hard in the past, but now they were getting a bit tired. And we had declining membership. In fact, this is what it looked like in our membership. In the previous 15 years, between 2000 and 2015, our membership went down 30%. And that's a typical trend that was happening in Rotary all around the place. And so clearly, I came in as the president in 2015, and I wanted to do something about this. But the journey had actually started before that. This slide here, there's a lot of detail on it, and as I've said to Caro, these slides can be made available later if you want to get them. I won't go into every detail on there, but I just wanted to say this was a 7-year journey. And I came in as president in 15-16, but the journey had actually started when we look back earlier than that in 2013. The president at that time, he was suggested by the DG that he does a strategic plan. He wasn't too excited about that because he realised that Rotary didn't have a vision statement, for one. And what we did have, we just had some priorities and values. There wasn't an action plan as we have now for Rotary International. So we had to sort of start from scratch. So as you can see there, some of the things that were done, we were actually celebrating our 90th year in 2013. And so we celebrated the success. We acknowledged the older members. One of the key things we did was we did a vocational profiles on each of our older members. This was a wonderful impact on elevating those people, and also for others to know who they were. Because they'd come to Rotary and most people didn't know who they were, which is really a shame because a lot of them were successful people in their life, and it was important to do it. I won't go into every detail there, but you can see the individual contributions were made by different presidents, and you'll see also that the interventions that they took to actually bring about change. You can see who did what. But it would be untruthful of me to say it was easy because, as I said earlier at the beginning of this presentation, the systemic yearly change of one president to another sort of made it about the president rather than about the club itself. And that needed to be overcome. And in fact, doing a strategic plan helped to overcome it, but it was still a very difficult challenge. What I've done on this next slide is I've looked at those 7 years, and I've put them together into a troika arrangement where there was 3 presidents and what they did. The first troika was the presidents for 13, 14, 15. I was the one coming in halfway through 15. And together we sort of looked at those things. If you look at it like that, it's actually essential that those three presidents work together to overcome that. It's about my year, which is really a difficult situation we have in Rotary. The second troika was, I was part of that. As you can see, the 15 appears in both of those, so halfway through the 15. And so you notice I use the word we because it wasn't done by the one president, it was done by the people that were involved in that. And in each case, there's three. And the third troika that I've used there takes us right through to the halfway through this year just completed. And you can see some of the things that they did progressively on this journey. And as I said before, working in a troika is not easy, and it would be wrong to say that it was. It was a lot of hard work, but we achieved a lot, and this is the results that came about. So this slide shows you the variations between our membership at the beginning of July 15 and the 30th of June. It just happens to be the time that I came in to be president, but it's not. I'm not claiming this is my work. This is a combination of a number of people through the strategic approach. And as you can see there, the variations are quite significant. You might say that the active members haven't gone up much, but remember they were going down at the rate of 10% every 5 years. So in this 5-year period, they've gone up by 8, but our honorary members have increased, as you see, and also the Friends of Rotary have increased, and most significantly, when you look at the under 50s and the number of females, those percentages have increased. This is what we look like now. You can see more women, you can see young people. In fact, on that slide, there are people from, there's an Anglo-Saxon people, as usual, there's Indian people, there's Vietnamese people, and there's a young Belgian lady in the left-hand corner there as well. And there are 7 females in that picture. This is the Rotary Club of Adelaide board now in 2021, just taken over. The president is a female, that's Heidi in the middle there. Sitting next to her is Trish, and up behind is Liz and Monica, and there's a little in white above Monica is another member of ours, is a very important member. We call her a miracle because she's the lady that lost her husband and her daughter at the White Island volcano. So she's a part of our board, and she's back with us, which is wonderful. On the right hand side, you see Rajiv. He's an Indian man. And on the bottom left-hand side in the front, you can see Nick, who's under 40 and is our treasurer. So a big change in our board to what it used to be. But there's more. Some of the most important outcomes of our strategic approach were that we retained our longer-serving members. We actually worked very hard to do that. It was really important that we did so. In a lot of cases, the longer-serving members get peed off by the change and the way it's brought in, and they leave, and you don't want that happening. The other things that happened is our participation, engagement, and satisfaction grew. We became more vibrant, and service outcomes have increased over this 5-year period, both in international projects and local projects. So what did we do? Well, in 2013, one of the key things that the president of that year did, he undertook the visioning exercise, and these are the results of that a survey that we did. But also, I've mentioned in the heading there that after honouring the past, this was really important. We wanted to bring those older, longer-serving members with us, and we celebrated the past, but we also identified and celebrated them individually and made them feel a part of it. So as you can see there, we identified what our members like most, what they want for the future. So they had a considerable buy-in on what they dislike. And so before we did a strategic plan, we knew that the plan needed to incorporate these key things. The next president, following that, the president did that survey approach. he listened to that feedback because the members said very clearly that they wanted to keep fellowship and a very high quality speaker program. That's what kept them coming to Rotary. So the next president made a feature of Rotary being the best hour of the week, and that was really important. We listened to what they said. This next slide shows the pathway to success. This is there's a lot in this. I'd say a few key words about it. We wanted to go from being a good club to a great club, and this model by James Collin, who wrote a book called Built to Last, and another one called Good to Great, where he identified the factors that make a difference in the companies that actually make that leap from just being good to great and survive through various conditions. He identified 7 key factors. First of all, he identified that they had disciplined people, disciplined thought, and disciplined action. And these were the factors. Level 5 leadership. We've already talked a little bit about leadership, and I'll talk a bit more about it. It's crucial. They then identified who they wanted on board before they worked out where they were going, where they wanted to go, what strategic approach they wanted to take. That's not easy in Rotary because we just get people coming and we've only got what we've got. But it's very, very important to get the right people in the right job if you can do that. They confronted the brutal facts, and I've already shown you some of those brutal facts. We did that at a club assembly, and when you show those sort of statistics to the members, they're not silly. Everyone knows how important that is. Some people think it's negative to do that, but the research by Collins showed that it's actually demotivating if leaders are not facing the brutal facts and sharing them, and being positive about a future as well, of course. The next one he calls the hedgehog concept, and I'll explain that a little bit more in a moment. They also had a culture of discipline that took them over time, and they only used technology which was relevant to the hedgehog concept, which I'll explain in a minute. The last item is the circle itself. He referred to it as the flywheel approach. When you go on a journey of change, you've got to recognise it's a bit like a flywheel in a workman's workshop. They're very hard to get going, but once you get them going, you've got to push really hard. They got a momentum of their own, and they take off, and you just got to push them every now and again. So there's a build-up period, and then you'd have to break through. So it was important for our members to understand that this was a journey that was not going to be an easy one, and that's how it turned out. And there was a lot of hard work at the beginning. I talked about the hedgehog concept. This is really what it really is about, is identifying what matters most, what makes an organisation successful. And you ask 3 key questions. What are we passionate about? What can we be best in the world at? And what drives our economic engine? And it's where the answers to those 3 questions intersect. He calls it the hedgehog because hedgehogs know how to survive. They do what they got to do naturally. And this is what this is about. What are we best in the world at? What are we really passionate about? And what drives our economic engine? I've got there, you can see the answers to the question that came out, that was made to the members in the survey, came out with those answers. We're most passionate about service, projects, community, fellowship, and fun, and our values we're passionate about. And we realise that it's the collective use of our time, talents, and treasure that makes us to do good, makes us better than any other organisation in the world. But we've got to remember our subscriptions, our economic factors, they are important as well. So we used that concept when we developed our plan. We developed a 5-year strategic plan out of that, and very importantly, this plan had measurable outputs and activities. Our vision was clearly just that. Rotary Adelaide to be transformed from a good club to a great one. And there's some words underneath that, well, what that really meant. It was about participation, involvement, image, service provision, enjoyment, and satisfaction. We decided our purpose that was going to actually drive that achievement of that vision needed to be clearly specified. And that was to develop a more vibrant, effective, and proactive club where members enjoy being engaged with their talents, networks, and time and resources in serving local and international communities. And then we identified four key objectives or strategic objectives that needed to You notice the arrows going up. One of my successor was a very experienced person in strategic planning and project management, and it's the logic that sort of goes. The logic is if you do the thing that below, that achieves the thing above, and eventually the vision. So the 4 key objectives were those things: great meetings and fellowship, rebuild our membership and engagement of our members, optimise our service and fundraising, and modernise our communication. If you think about those things, they're not unlike Rotary's new strategic objectives of impact, reach, engagement, and adaptation. And of course, as I said before, beneath these 4 key objectives, we identified what we needed to do to actually achieve those objectives, and we expressed them in measurable terms so that we could actually measure them at our board meetings as we went along. We then looked at what we needed to do to change, and there were 5 sequential steps that we took for that. The first one was to build an awareness, commitment, and buy-in, and I've talked a bit about how we did that. We talked a lot about the strategic plan as we had, club assembly and all the rest of it. So our members came on the journey with us, including the questionnaire. But before we tried to bring in, to achieve some of our objectives, we realised that we had to make the club ready. And I've got to tell you, I was the president at the time, and I discovered the YAS model for membership growth. And I said to the membership chair, I want you to implement this. It's now November. My years, there I go, talking about my year, one of the big dangers of instead of thinking about the long term, will be over very quickly after Christmas. I would like you to have a YAS type membership drive in February. And one of the key members of our committee wrote a paper called Moments of Truth, and basically said, go away, Mr. President. Unless we change our club first, it'll be a waste of time. And he identified the moments of truth, meaning the things that when people come into a Rotary Club, what do they like and what do they dislike, and what are they likely to stay or not or join. And so that was a key moment. So we did those changes before we did anything. We then operated the YAS model. We had the first YAS model meeting in April, not in February, as I, the president, required, and that was the best thing that we did. We then encouraged them to join by sort of explaining the good things about Rotary at the YAS model cocktail function, and then we had processes around welcoming them and engaging them, which are the keys to retention. So 5 simple steps to bring in members, and the key one there is to make sure you change first. So that's how we achieved those results over 5 years with that strategic plan. And I haven't gone into the subsequent years. I've really concentrated on perhaps the first 3.5 years. But if you have a look at some of those earlier slides, you can see what subsequent presidents did in alignment with that strategic plan. But I just wanted to finish by sharing some key learnings with the benefit of hindsight, because when you're in the middle of something like this, you don't see it all until you look back. I came across this quote recently that said, before you are wise, after you're wise, maybe that's wiser. I certainly feel that way. And in between, you're otherwise. And I certainly felt like that along the way as well. So this is the first learning. And I'll mention that story about, as the president, talking about the YAS model, which to gain membership, and I sort of wanted them to get on with it sooner rather than later. And they told me to go away, and wrote the paper on moments of truth, and wanted to change the club first. When I took over as president, I saw this quote by Gandhi, and I asked my mentor, who's the guy that actually wrote that paper on Moments of Truth, and I said, look, I don't really understand this. He's talking about leadership, but he's sort of saying, there go my people, I must follow them. What does that really mean? He explained to me, that there is what he's saying is that you've set out a vision, they've got the vision, and they're running with it ahead of you. That's what Gandhi was saying. This vision and purpose are so important, and if you can communicate it and convey it, you'll have trouble keeping up with you. So that was a huge learning experience for me in the case of the YAS model, and stepping aside and allowing the members who had the vision to get on with it, which they did. And we had a number of YAS model meetings over the years subsequently, and grew our membership extensively. More important learnings that I've gleaned along the journey. First of all, the best change leaders think long term. They're not about my year, they're thinking about what's best in the long term. So important. They build on the past and they work in partnership with others. That is a real test in Rotary, because we all, given the task of being a leader for the year, and we need to get over that and work together with people. Such a crucial part of being a change leader, in Rotary especially. Research showed by Collins that the best level 5 level of leadership leaders have low ego. It's not about them. And they simultaneously are quite often very humble people. And they combine this with a very fierce resolve for organisation success. It's both, that they are humble and they are fiercely wanting to see the organisation succeed, not themselves, the organisation. Another key characteristic of best change leaders is that they foster diverse perspectives. I heard recently somebody mention former Premier Jeff Kennett when he was the Premier of Victoria. They use as an example of somebody who achieved so much change in a short time, and he did it because he put on his advisory board people from the left who he knew would have a different perspective, and he selected, after listening, he selected the best of the left and the right, and ensured that those perspectives came through when the implementation was and achieved so much. And finally, best change leaders are able to mobilise groups of people to see and do things differently for the greater good. This is a real talent that some people have, and most of us need to develop. It's a very important. It's often referred to as adaptive leadership. And I just want to say another significant learning I had subsequent to this when I was a DG. We invited a group of people from the Governors Leadership Forum, which is a state government, or just the state governors it is. It's a program where companies pay a lot of money to send people on a 1-year leadership development, and they're given projects to do. And one of my presidents as a DG listened to my messages about falling membership, and he said, "Would you like me to offer to this group of young leaders the Rotary's problem of falling membership?" And I said, "Oh, they'd be delighted." So a brief was written, and 4 or 5, maybe 6 young leaders from South Australia, different companies around the place, took on that as a project for 12 months. And when they gave us their report, this was what they said: Rotary hasn't got a membership problem. It's got an adaptive change challenge, which requires adaptive leadership. And so these were new terms for me, a big learning. And what they were actually saying when you looked into it was adaptive change challenges are unlike technical challenges, where you've got to change something technically and it gets fixed. In that they are unclear and undefined, with outcomes that take a lot of time and learning, and that they require adaptive leadership. And the definition of adaptive leadership is the art of mobilising a group of people to see and do things differently for the greater good. A quote from Dr. Josie McLean, who I recently listened to on this subject. That is the issue that Rotary, I believe, has. We don't have that capability in Rotary enough. And if we could train people on adaptive leadership, I think we'll go a long way on being effective in change management. This is getting near the end now. That lady, Dr. Josie McLean, also gave us this metaphor, and how true it is. The butterfly change is hard at the beginning, all that work that little bug does in eating all those leaves, and it's messy in the middle when the change starts to happen, but it's beautiful in the end when the butterfly is formed. I think that's a positive way to look at the challenge. And I'd just like to finish with Rotary's 5-year strategic plan and vision. This is a fantastic strategic plan, and Rotary has done, to what it was before. What I've learned about strategy is that the strategic objectives uniquely go together. They do in this case. And when you look at our vision statement, which we didn't have 5 years ago, and you look at the key words in that vision statement, Rotary has provided behind this a template for clubs to go through this project, adopting that strategic plan and vision. So I'd recommend strongly, don't go through the hard work that we had to go through and try and do it from the start. Run off of this, and there are resources available to help you to do that. So that concludes my presentation, and I'd like now to open up for questions if I can.
Sounds like a good time to do that. Thank you, David. That was wonderful. There's a very obvious question here. Very obvious question. Adelaide, Rotary Adelaide, second biggest Rotary club in the country, made up of movers and shakers, not your average Rotary club. They can do things that little clubs can't. So how would you respond to that, David?
Well, we were blessed. It has to be admitted that we had some incredible resources that helped us to do this, some very competent people. But as I said at the beginning, there's a lot of generic messages in this presentation, and I believe that those messages apply to any club. If you go back through the key points of the message, you've got a strategic plan, and I admit, that strategic planning sort of like, that's too hard, but Rotary's now got some resources there to help you with it, and they've done the hard yards. It's just a matter of adapting it in your own club under those key objectives that they've got, and using the resources, like getting the membership involved. If you go through the resources that Rotary has got there are some resources to help you to ask your members what is it they want, and to localise your plan to your club. So whilst I agree with what you're saying, Kero, and a lot of people will say, that these challenges are too hard for a small club, I think that the resources are now there, and if, with a bit of support, that you can once you've got a strategic plan, and you can sort of work to the future and keep in mind that it's a journey, and work together. Try and overcome and get a team of people that want to do it together. I had a wonderful comment the other day on our local district membership chair forum, where somebody said that their club now has got they don't have a president, they have 3 or 4 people that are co-chairs of the club. Well, that's people working together. It's a troika arrangement. And I think that's the sort of thing that can be done. We've got to think outside the square. If you go back through those things, and I'd be more than happy for people to have all those slides and to talk, if they wanted to talk about it and how it can be used in your own club, please give me a call.
So that leads to the next question. Given that we want this presentation to trigger similar success stories elsewhere, what's the first thing a club wanting to copy the Rotary Adelaide success story should do? Where should they start? What should they do?
Well, I think the first thing that they've got to do, I guess, is to get a group of people together who are prepared to think more than just 1 year, that are prepared to work together, not to make it about themselves and my year, and then to work out where they want to go. And to work out where they want to go, you need to get buy-in from your members. And so some of the things that I talked about there was that visioning exercise, a questionnaire. There's lots of resources where you can do a club health check and things of that nature. and various questionnaires that you can do that will get your members involved, so that you make sure that that group of people together and communicate back to the members, bring them with you, get that buy-in. So the start point, I guess, is people realising how important that level 5 leadership is, and getting a group of people together who are prepared to think that longer term and to work together on it, rather than just having their year.
So it's a matter of it's a matter of collaborating.
Absolutely, yeah, and realising that any one of us doesn't have all the skills. As most of us, I think, realise, I certainly know that the great things that are achieved in Rotary happen when there's a collective of people working together, bringing different talents and being prepared to listen to one another, and having a common purpose. And when that happens over time, some amazing things are achieved. And this is no different. It's got to be a collaborative effort where people are sort of working together, listening to one another with that strong commitment to the purpose of transforming to the future.
Casey's thrown in a question in terms of the how-to part there. How do you motivate members to put in the adaptation problem you mentioned? How do you motivate members?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think a lot of people just come to Rotary to, I presume Casey means to put into this process. Is that?
Yes. Yes,
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think the thing that we got a lot of rubber on the road was when we put up the brutal facts. If you can do some analysis of your last, like we did, the last 15 years, and the analysis of your demographics. A lot of people say, well, people haven't put in their birth dates. Well, just if you're in a club, just work. We worked it out ourselves. You can work out how many you got in the different age categories. You're doing a rough and ready assessment. How many age between this group and that age and that, and you can work it out pretty quickly. You can work out what your what percentage of women and what your ethnic, and you can put those statistics up, and you can put up the statistics about what's happened to your club in the last 10, 15, 20 years. And those brutal facts, actually, people come on board. They say, yeah, we have got an issue, but give them the opportunity to say what they like and what they dislike. That is really important. That step of that visioning questionnaire gets buy-in, because it's their club. And if you sort of if you do it in alignment with Rotary strategic plan, and tailor it so it's local under those headings, because we're all interested in being effective and enjoying the fellowship and all the rest of it. So if you listen to what members say they like and build those things, I think you will get. But having said that, I've got to say that when we did that exercise originally, I was talking to the president that did that 2 years before myself as president, and he said today that it was a bit of a challenge because, what's this? We don't, but we'll do it. So they reluctantly did it, and you never get 100%. If you get 50%, 50 or 60%, you've done pretty well.
Yeah, thank you, David. When we were discussing the presentation, I mean, +8 over 5 years is a good number, but the underlying number, I think, is much more significant. Would you like to comment on that? The other things that may have influenced that, that may have stopped that +8 being much greater?
Yes. Well, first of all, had the original trends continued, that 158 on the 1st of July 2015, today would probably be those current trends would be somewhere around about 120, and so that's not happened. It's now +8 in that category. But the other categories, the honorary members, one of the presidents brought in a process of actually, rather than them just dropping off, turning them into honorary members, having a strategy around helping them to come to Rotary and enjoy Rotary. So they're still part of the team. And of course, the Friends of Rotary. Rotary's new strategic plan talks about participants. It just doesn't talk about members, active members. And I think we need to change our mindset in that regard. Maybe we'll have less members in the future and do more by tapping into these other forms of support. And certainly the trends in volunteering are edging that way. People don't want to pay money to be a volunteer, but they do want to do things. So if Rotary can adapt the way it offers and new forms of clubs, which is a key thing that we're sort of trying to push at the moment, where people can sort of become members, maybe become friends of Rotary and associates. So this is part of the mix.
Thank you, David.
Does that answer that question, Kiro?
It does, but there was another aspect that I think is quite significant in the case of Rotary Adelaide, which has a lot of older members. You mentioned a number who had passed away during those 5 years.
That's a very good point. We just go to so many funerals, and the rate of 5 or 6 a year was quite common. So that was happening at the same time, and we could tell that was going to happen. And some people in Rotary generally will tell you that's going to happen. There's a cliff coming in that regard because of our age groups. So that is a very relevant thing, and that was part of the reason why we did these vocational profiles, because doing a vocational profile on an older member who's heading towards putting the queue in the rack actually keeps them interested and keeps them engaged, and they keep coming because who they are is celebrated, and others learn about them, and they feel really good about the fact that. So I really strongly recommend this concept of vocational profiling and sharing that information rather than going to the funeral and finding out all the wonderful things that they've done. Enjoy them while they're there, and it really does make a difference.
So by sharing the stories of these older folk with their distinguished careers and the like, you gave them a second lease of Rotary life.
I must tell you the story of one of our members who he didn't really want me to do a vocational profile on him, but he had been a strategic human resource manager in his career, and so I had a little bit in common with him. And I said, how important this is that we know about youth. And anyway, he reluctantly told me his life story, and I summarised it in 3/4 of a page maximum, and I gave it back to him and said, would you like to change it? Changed it a little bit, and I said, you comfortable if I put this on the website? And he said, yeah, I'm happy with that. And 2 or 3 weeks later, he came to Rotary, and he came up to me and he said, I've got to say to you that my wife, Nan, said to me as I left to come to Rotary today, I'm worried about you, Colin, because you're in danger of becoming a true Rotarian. He wanted to share that with me, that he changed it elevated his own, how he felt about himself. He went on, he was a knife and fork member, but he went on to be awarded a Paul Harris Fellow because of his involvement, has made a significant contribution. So I think that's just so important, that engagement of our existing members. Look after them first. It's absolutely crucial.
Well, it's a bit hollow. The organisation's a bit hollow if it's not looking after the current team members.
Yeah.
Casey's asked another very relevant question in this day and age about how and where the new members were recruited, and that takes me to Adelaide's use of the YAS process, which I think has been a key element there. Would you like to tell us how you used YAS? You've touched on it.
Yeah. So I picked up the YAS model from Noel Travascus, who gave it to me when I went to a seminar. And I handed it to the membership guy, and as I said before, I told you the story of how they sort of pushed me away and did it a bit later when they were changed the club. That was a really crucial thing, to change the club first, and that 5-step process of how to go about that. But what we did, when we did our first one, we had a cocktail function. We followed the process of the YAS model. Was Judy Ford on this meeting? I don't know. It comes from Judy. Not sure Judy's on, but she can provide that step-by-step process. The committee changed it a little bit, and Judy wouldn't be happy about that because it's a sequence of the process that really does make it work. But they got, the first event that we had, we probably had about, 40 or 50 people who came to a cocktail function that we put on, and we showcased Rotary, and we just made them feel welcome, brought them along to a meeting, offered that they could come to a meeting at our expense and enjoy. By this stage, the club had changed and they could see the benefit, and then sort of gradually invited them to be a part of us. So we did probably about 5 or 6 of those over a number of years, and after a while, the club actually gave it away because those new members were inviting other friends, and it wasn't necessary to do it all the time. And the club focused more on engagement and retention. Absolutely crucial. You've got to, once you get them in, you've got to make sure that they're given something to do. And so our strategy is focused on that. And having the old fireside chats, it was a combination of people that might be interested, inquiring online as well. And we'd have a sort of a fireside chat with 15 people, tell them a bit about Rotary. Wasn't sort of organised from get-go like a Yaks thing, but it was just a group of people that showed a bit of interest, and the club would explain what Rotary's about, invite them along, and then turn them into members. So that's part of how it's evolved. And as you'll see, if you look at the detail on some of those summaries, that the club also started looking at business networking events, and that was a significant success last year in getting more contacts as well.
Thank you, David. I want to touch on something that has been important with the renewal of Adelaide. And once, from what you've told me, in days gone by, Rotary Adelaide wasn't the friendliest place for women Rotarians.
Yeah, and not only for women Rotarians, but I've got to say, when I joined in 2000, to walk into the Rotary meeting, it was all these old blokes and their cliques and all the rest of it. It wasn't really that comfortable. Certainly for women, they did feel that way. I know my wife has said she would feel that way, and a lot of women have said that that was the case. It felt overwhelming with all the men who were all lovely people. High percentage of them would have been wonderful people, but when you got a group like that, it's an overwhelming thing. So women felt very much like they were marginalised in that sort of situation. So a bit of work had to be done in that regard, because, us blokes, we sort of don't see it the way they do sometimes. So I don't know, have I answered that, Kero?
Yeah, I'm just wondering how things have changed. I mean, you've got a lot more women. They're staying. You have a second woman president in the history of the club, and you've got a bunch of you've got more diversity, more inclusion. So what's changed? So what's happening differently in the culture?
Well, I think that we all, society has changed in that regard. Certainly in our time, hasn't it? And I think we've evolved as understanding diversity a lot better than we have in the past. As you said, we have the second woman in our club. I met up with the first woman president, and she was in the 1990s. She gave it away after 6 months, because after every meeting she'd get so much adverse feedback from men telling her she can't say that and can't say this, and she gave it away. So we have changed ourselves. We have changed. I think men have become more understanding of the need to do it differently in that regard. So it is very different in the environment. As more women have come into the club, it sort of has got a better balance, and we've still got a long way to go in that regard, and it's an ongoing journey.
Going back to this, the importance of the collaboration between successive presidents, what advice would you have for a club who might see a leader coming in who was not interested in playing a team game like that?
I think they need to have a conversation. I really think that people should, the club, the elders, if you like, of the club, need to have this right attitude that you were mentioning, rather than that, do it our way thing of the past, and really understand the importance of the leaders working together. And then you have a conversation with somebody that's, if they're not comfortable in being a part of a team that works together in a troika arrangement, well, maybe they should stand aside, because it's so important. And the other thing too, if a young president comes in and the people around them haven't got that attitude, and say, they've still got the old attitude, that's really hard if they want to bring in change on their own. And I think that Rotary needs to change its learning and development processes to help people to realise how to be the adaptive leadership model, the right sort of leadership. And you don't have to be in a position of authority to be an adaptive leader. Anyone can be an adaptive leader, but Rotary as a whole needs to develop that capability. I really think that we have got a significant shortfall in that regard that needs to be addressed. I've seen so many cases where young presidents want to come and take on this challenge, and they are just pushed aside by people that don't want to change and don't support them. And I think it's crucial that, I'm talking about the opposite of what you're talking about, I guess, Caro, but in both cases, I think as an organisation, we need to realise that there's a real challenge there to get that right thinking of people working together, and to have that skill of actually being able to bring people with you. We've got to do a lot as an organisation to change our capability and support people if we're really serious about this change journey.
Thank you, David. Next question has to do with the way we're doing things right as opposed to doing the right things. Do we need to give pets a workover to reflect the thinking that you're talking about here?
Absolutely. In fact, I'm involved in the regional pilot project, which some people here may have been given some feedback on the survey that was done a couple of months ago, and there is a lot of feedback along those lines. And we have one of the working groups that we have on that regional pilot project is looking at leadership and development, and we're hoping that they come up with the sorts of ways that, as you say, we need to look at how PETS is done and start focusing on doing some training and leadership around these sort of issues. I think it's an absolute game breaker if we do that. And some of those points that are made about what the Governor's Leadership Forum talked about, they talked about that our problem is an adaptive change challenge, and we need adaptive leadership. We need training around that, because it's a new term. I learned about it once I got that report, and I think that if we don't get serious about that and extend that training to a different form of PETS, a different sort of agenda, we're not going to get very far on this challenge.
So this is really one of those things that if we don't bite the bullet in terms of adaptive change, it could well mean that we're going to be a step closer to extinction as an organisation.
Yes. Yeah, I'm glad that the custodians of the Adelaide Oval bit the bullet. And it's not easy, it was a real hard challenge. The same thing applies here in Rotary. It's a difficult challenge to bite the bullet on this sort of stuff and it doesn't happen unless you get these sort of right things in place. So the regional pilot project, I keep going back to that, sorry, but it is focused on a progressive approach to the future in that regard. And there's lots of important challenge that face us, that we've got to make some important decisions about those ways that we do it, so that we do survive. We want to be. We're coming up to our 100th year, and we want to see Rotary flourish for the next 100, and we've got to adapt to new ways to do it.
Thank you, David. We've been going for nearly an hour, so I think it's the time has come to perhaps to call a close. But before I do that, I'd like to offer you the opportunity or invite you to summarise or to offer some closing comments before we do close up.
Yeah, thank you, Caro. I finished up with the slide of Rotary's 5-year strategic plan and vision statement, and Holger Nack is asking all. And we had our district governor call at Rotary Adelaide last week, and he passed on the message from Holger that he wants all clubs to undertake a 5-year strategic plan. And of course, you mentioned that, and everyone's eyes glaze over. That sounds like a lot of hard work, but we now have a fantastic vision, and we have a fantastic strategic plan for Rotary, and we have some fantastic resources in behind it that can help people to go down that path. And in addition to that, I would summarise by saying that as an organisation, as I was saying before, we need to provide better supports, and you mentioned pets and the like, as part of the way we provide support to leaders going forward on these challenges. So if I could just summarise by saying, give it a go and look to the future, because I think that there are some significant things going to happen in the next as a result of our current RI leadership and people to come. Jennifer Jones coming in a couple of years as our first female president. So it's an exciting time to be looking at these things. And as an assistant Rotary Coordinator, I know we've got Adrian Roach. I don't know if Adrian's still there on the thing, but he's in charge of all the assistant Rotary Coordinators who support the districts in membership, and we're all committed to helping the district membership chairs and the club membership chairs in this challenge. I'll leave it at that.
Fantastic. Thank you, David. Adrian is actually going to be on Membership Voice in 5 weeks, telling us about the opportunities that the coordinator and the assistant coordinators offer to our Rotary network. So I'm looking forward to that. What I'd like you to do now, please, is join me in a round of applause for David.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, David. And thank you, everyone. That concludes our webinar tonight. Thank you for joining us.
Good night, everybody. Thank you. Thank you for joining, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, David.
Bye, Jen.